All right, so we were talking about Hitler's rise to power, and this is you have to realize, folks, this is a short version of this because this usually takes several classes to talk about. Hitler is going to take power by the use of what becomes the Nazi Party. It's a socialist party. He puts together a group of paramilitary people, his brown shirts, who are eventually going to become his stormtroopers, who are going to eventually become his SS, and they're going to establish a political wing, and then they're going to gain seats in the Reichstag, in the government. And then eventually they're going to put him in a position where he is going to be Chancellor of Germany. We're going to be looking at a series of issues that come up, but what happens is there's going to be an attempt, a terrorist attempt to burn down the Reichstag. Hitler's going to go ahead and use this to his advantage and say, hey, look, it's the enemies of Germany. It's the enemies of the Reich. It's the enemies of the people that are doing this. It's these nasty Jewish people that are doing this. And so he's going to, again, paint that target on them. But what's going to happen is it's going to create a movement. And this movement is going to give Hitler power. It's going to give him the authority to make decisions based on his whims. What he will do is he will go ahead and he will start to build power. And one of the things he's going to do in building power is he's going to go ahead and start violating the treaty. And what he wants to do is he wants to rebuild the army. Well, they're not allowed to rebuild the army. He wants to rebuild the Air Force. They are not allowed to rebuild an Air Force. He wants to build a better Navy. Again, they're not allowed to do any of this stuff, and they're restricted in the movement according to what happened with this. What he's going to do is he's going to start to build up a military. He's going to start to build up what becomes the Luftwaffe, the Air Force. Just a little ways away from where we're at in Germany and France is a place called Spain, and Spain is undergoing a civil war. And the Civil War normally is between two factions within the state. Well, what's going to happen is we're looking at a socialist faction, we're looking at a democratic faction. Also, what we're looking at is a huge battleground, and what will happen is several other nations will be unofficially involved in the battle. You have Americans that are forming what's called the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and they're fighting in Spain unofficially. Well, you will also have some unofficial troops that resemble Germans that are going to be practicing brand new techniques. They're going to be practicing lightning attacks. Okay, they're going to be practicing warfare that involves not just tanks, but it involves planes. They're going to be working on a new form of what they call blitzkrieg, this lightning battle tactic, and it's huge. The thing is they can train the soldiers, they can train the units, they can train the Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and they can train the pilots. They can do it all under the guise that they're not German units, they're actually there aiding the Spanish. And so this is what allows him to rebuild the army. And then what he's going to do is he's going to utilize this army, and he's going to start to push the boundaries of present Germany towards old Germany. He's going to start to violate the treaty by taking some territory back. Well, what he's going to run into is he's going to violate the treaty, and what will happen is France is going to say, hey, Britain, you're in charge of this. You're in charge of policing this, and we don't want to have to go to a war, but we will. And what will happen is the Prime Minister of Britain, Chamberlain, will come in and say, here, let me handle this. He'll go in and he'll go, hey, Adolf, we can't have you violating treaty. You can't do this. And Adolf is going to say, hey, we just need some Lebensraum, is the German word. We just need some living room, some living space. But we need to spread out. And I'm sorry, we didn't mean to break the treaty. And what will happen is they'll say, okay, well, look, Chamberlain will say, just keep where you're at. Don't take any more. And if you promise not to misbehave again, then it's not going to be an issue. This becomes the policy of appeasement because time after time after time, the Germans will go ahead and break the treaty boundaries. They'll gain more and more land. It will come to the point that even to avoid war, Chamberlain and France will give them chunks of territory to avoid the war because they don't want another war. Okay? They don't want another war. And so what happens is Germany successively and successfully keeps on breaking this treaty to expand the territory. And that's what you have to know. And in addition to that, what they're going to do is they're going to form a new set of treaties. They're going to form a treaty that is supposed to be a protection treaty, a defense treaty with Italy. And that's going to become what's called the Rome-Berlin axis. It's the Treaty of Steel at this point. Eventually, we're going to add Japan into that. But what we're looking at is we're looking at the building of this territory. And then what will happen is we'll begin a small series of trade-offs. They will make a treaty with Russia. Well, Russia is kind of flying solo at this particular point. Russia is flying solo because we have refused to go ahead and recognize their new communist government. Well, Germany is going to recognize their new communist government. They're going to say, hey, you know what? Russia, if you give us back the territory, or we will give you back the territory that you took or you surrendered to us in World War I, if you'll forgive us the war debts we owe you from World War I, and we'll just call it a truce. They're going to sign a non-aggression pact. In addition to that, they're going to come up with a treaty because what happens is Germany wants to retake some of the territory they used to have that now belongs to Poland. Well, they're going to turn to Russia and say, hey, Russia, we want our territory back here from Poland. Do you mind? And Russia is going to say, you know what? We claim a chunk of Poland as well. We'll tell you what, we will turn a blind eye to what you're doing if you will give us our chunk of Poland back when you take your chunk of Poland back. They're going to sign this non-aggression pact, and it's going to hold up till about halfway through the war when things are going to blow up for Russia itself. What you have to look at is this is a slow escalation, okay? It's a slow escalation in what's happening in aggravation. And what will happen is we'll say, okay, look, we're going to violate the treaty here. Okay, we're going to violate the treaty here. We're going to violate the treaty here. And each time, Chamberlain is going to appease them. Each time, Chamberlain is going to say, okay, we're not going to do this. It's going to be that final move into the whole bombing of Warsaw in Poland when they're going to go ahead and use the Messerschmitt bombers, the dive bombers. They're called Screaming Mimes. And if you got the opportunity, I would go ahead and Google Screaming Mimi and listen to the track on that because what they do within 48 hours, these dive bombers are coming and going, yeah, and they will pelt Warsaw repeatedly enough that they don't really need to invade. They're going to go ahead and give up. It will be this invasion of Warsaw that eventually is going to go ahead and trigger France to declare war, go ahead and trigger Great Britain to declare war, go ahead and pull them in because they're going to say, you know what, we can't let this happen again. We can't do this. The problem is, by the time they are ready to declare war, the time they're ready to realize, oh, this is going to happen whether we want to or not, it's too late. Germany has already built this huge machine. They've already started penalizing the Jewish people. They've already started picking up a variety of people that are opposed to the empire. Hitler's already declared what becomes the Third Reich. And if you don't know what Reich means, Reich is, he's calling the Third Roman Empire at this particular point. And so you have to realize that by the time they do this, by the time France and Britain decide it's an issue, it's too late of an issue at that particular point. And so what's going to happen here is I'm going to talk about the actual war in the very last clip. All right, thank you.